Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Data Unchained. I'm your host, Molly Presley. So what is this podcast all about? The paradigm for data access has changed. In the post-cloud era, as workforces become more distributed, in today's decentralized world, getting data to the places of the point of decision and to the humans who need it has become increasingly more challenging. This podcast digs into the challenges as well as the solutions in making data an asset as a globally available resource. We've been focusing a lot of these shows on vertical-specific or industry-specific challenges. I'm excited to welcome today Rami Rauch, the CTO of Applied Genomics, to today's show. Rami, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you very much.
I believe it's a bit late for you out in Israel, so thank you for taking your evening time to jump on the show. So tell us a little bit about yourself maybe to get started, and then we'll talk about the company as well.
Sure, thank you. About myself, a little bit of a background. Over the past 15 years, I've gained extensive experience in the biomedical field, especially in directing projects related to bioinformatics and computational genomics. I studied biology in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, after which I took a break from biology and I worked as a programmer in high-tech in the industry for 3 years. After gaining real-world experience with coding and database programming, I reconnected with biology, but this time on the computational level. And this is when my bioinformatics career began. And it began at the Stanford University in Palo Alto, where I developed software for basic research at the genetics department of Stanford. And since then, I've been exercising various roles in the computational biology industry. And fast forwarding, today I'm the CTO of Applied Genomics. I can tell a little bit about the company if you want, Molly.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. There's, I think, rarely been more interesting times than what's going on in this space right now, and talking about the company and your specific focus would be great.
Absolutely, yes. So Applied Genomics is a leading bioinformatics solution company in Israel. It is located in the heart of Rehovot's Science Park. It's very close to the Weizmann Institute of Science. Applied Genomics has already established a track record of successful collaborations with more than 15 biotech, pharma, and healthcare institutions in Israel. For example, Applied Genomics, we developed MyScreen, which is a diagnostic genetic panel that is used to detect carriers of rare genetic diseases. And this panel actually is the best in its class for the Israeli population. And it is used today by the major healthcare providers in Israel. So Applied Genomics currently, obviously, we're planning to expand our product portfolio, product and services in the health tech using bioinformatics. But we are obviously also pursuing opportunities to leverage science and the health tech in using the artificial intelligence. So this is more or less the background.
Excellent. I'm curious, when you talk about being in place in a lot of the healthcare across Israel, why focused in Israel and not other countries? Is it just kind of a go-to-market reason, or is there compliance or data sharing reasons? Maybe you can go into a little bit more detail on that.
Sure. The reason why we're in Israel is by chance. Basically, the company was started by Michal Mashiach Golan, and she was the one that founded a service company at the beginning in 2017, and because she saw the need for many pharma companies in Israel, actually in the science park in Rehovot, have the option to outsource sometimes part of their project, but also, especially, she saw the need for healthcare Israeli providers to have a partner in a scientific way in the genetics bioinformatics field, and because without that they couldn't exercise one of their products if they wanted to develop something genetics, for example. So actually there was enough work for that field in Israel, but we also have some contacts with the companies outside of Israel, including America, including the States.
Yeah, it's interesting as we talk about the challenges around data sharing. There's a lot of times challenges that are associated to, political or geographic reasons. Sometimes it's, the compliance rules. And a lot of times it's just, you can only do so much with the staff you have. And that's absolutely makes sense too. I would like to talk a little bit about data sharing. So you're sharing data between researchers, healthcare providers. What kind of challenges are you bumping into right now in that space?
Right, that's a very good question. Data sharing and collaboration are definitely of great importance to us in applied genomics because we have witnessed firsthand how the lack of data sharing policies and technologies, especially, they can basically prevent good research. So let me explain what I mean. Good research often relies on what we call meta-analysis, which is a type of analysis that spans across disparate data sources and data types. However, we found and we see that quite often that researchers are limited only to a fraction of the available data due to the accessibility issues and the lack of sharing policies that we can talk about later. And this can have negative consequences, obviously, on reliability, on quality of research, but also delaying clinical impact on the research. So I can talk a little bit more. I mean, we can take an example if you want, Molly, and talk about it.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Yeah, I think that this is an area that is so important for this industry to address. I've been talking to some of your colleagues in other genomics institutes, and it seems like tackling data sharing is something that will help, with patient care and, time to development of new drugs and things like that. So I'd love to go into an example.
Yeah, the new drugs is a very good example. Let's take a moment to imagine that we are a pharmaceutical company developing a promising new drug, let's say, to treat specific subtype of cancer. And we're conducting this clinical trial. This is just an example that actually is very real. That needs, in this trial, this company, we need to find the best possible patients to participate in the trial. But there's a catch. In our example, we know that there's a data set of, let's say, DNA of 80 cancer patients that would be incredibly helpful to us to identify the right candidates for the trial. There's only one problem, okay? The data is likely held by some university or hospital, and accessing it's much easier said than done. And why is it like that? I'll talk about it a little bit later. But the potential consequences of not being able to access crucial data for our trial and drug development can be severe, with delayed therapy development for patients being just one of many negative outcomes.
I do find, even before we talk a little bit more about why it's complicated to get access to the data, is it a challenge to know which data exists to start with? From the technology side, we think about metadata about the data, but maybe even broader. Do you generally know which experiments have been run and who owns that data, or is even knowing that sometimes a challenge?
It's a very good point. The lack of data sharing, problem also affects the knowledge of where the data is. Sometimes we know there is a good data set somewhere, but I would say often we are not even aware. We are not even aware that somewhere, quite for sure, there's a very crucial data set that would solve a research issue or would take a clinical trial for patients that are waiting for that just on the success path instead of maybe not. So yes, it's true. Molly, also sometimes we don't know where is the data, but it goes beyond clinical only. It goes beyond clinical. You can go upstream to the research and take cancer, for example. We know cancer is a devastating disease, and it requires deep understanding of the biology of each type of cancer. But to achieve this, researchers need to study multiomics aspects of the cancer, DNA, RNA, epigenomics, proteomics, etc. And not only they need to study it across multiple scenarios and conditions. And if you think about it, and you do the math a little bit, you'll realize very quickly, and everybody in this field knows, that no one lab or even one hospital can achieve this alone. So collaboration and data sharing is essential for every making progress in any research, for sure for cancer research.
Okay, great. And so when you think about the remote access to data sets, maybe within your organization or sharing it across different organizations, what kind of challenges are you running into on the technology to be able to do that kind of remote access to data sets?
So let's talk about technology. I think that the challenges really, as you say, Molly, are, I would like to look at it in two main types: technical and then cultural and economical. On the technical challenge, so you were listing before when we met first time, there's remote data accessibility and data sharing problems. There is the challenge of being able to work in the same data on different sites and projects. And then there's biological semantics, which is known to be messy and still today lacks universal standardization. However, my feeling is that progress has been made for that. And the technical challenges are basically solved in theory today. They're solved. However, the solutions, for example, even solutions like Hammerspace may offer today, are by far not enough adopted and implemented in the scientific and biomedical world. And I think the reason is cultural and economic.
I've been speaking with some folks. There's a conference next week, BioIT World, out on the East Coast of the US that's going on. And of course, getting ready for that and presentations there. One of the folks I was talking to that we're on a panel with was saying that now that the platform and the technology exists, that kind of has taken away the excuse for us not to sort out these other problems that, we, for a long time, the scientific community had built up a storage system connected to a genomics processor, and that's where, or a genomic sequencer, and that's where all the scientific work was done. Somewhere else maybe was a high frequency microscope, and it was all kind of siloed. Now we've solved that problem, the multiomics and being able to share data. And so now we have to kind of challenge our industry to sorting through the other pieces, the standards, the kind of cultural pieces of
Right.
my data versus our data. How do you think we approach that? How do we influence the industry? Is it technology folks? I mean, you're a technologist also, as well
Right.
as, in the industry. Where do you think that needs to come from?
Well, it needs to come from all of us together. I think we talked about the issue of data privacy laws is something that needs to be talked about. Data privacy is very important. Data privacy policies are important. The moment we do experiments on mice, but nothing replaces real world data that is obtained by actual patients. And if you have good enough real world data in quantity and quality, these can generate real world evidence. And then it can really facilitate research and everything. So therefore, the issue of data privacy, once we talk about humans, is definitely something we need to put in the equation. The problem is this: that there's a misuse of data privacy sometimes, and we see it that unfortunately we see very often what seems to be an opportunistic usage of these laws to prevent data sharing. Either in academy, maybe you'll see it when with the culture of publish or perish. Okay, you want to hold your data until you get the chance to obviously publish the best paper you can, and then even then, I'm not sure you're going to release the data, but that's one. And then we have also the profit for selling use of data. I can't blame anyone to, if he wants to regain the money that he invested in generating the data. However, that also is something that very often prevents, I would say, data sharing for good research.
Do you feel like the advent of AI is going to force some changes here? Will AI be used again kind of internally for the reasons that a lot of the data sets have been not shared? Or do you think AI is going to force more sharing because it's harder to hold on to your information assets?
So that's a question. I do think that AI is an amazing opportunity that can bring really a real change for the scientific data sharing scenario. It can do it. But we still need to solve cultural and especially economical issues. Because if you think about it, so on one hand, we just said it before, if we're not going to share data, research will always be sub-ideal. We're never going to proceed, I think, in the ideal pace. On the other hand, generating data is very expensive. So how do we share but still maintain a fair economy for all the cycle of information? It's really a balance. There have been some few ideas that were proposed in the last years. For example, remote genomic databases that can reply to specific questions, so that it solves two issues. You're not releasing all your data, you generate it, but you're not releasing all the data. You cannot identify the person because you're not giving the whole DNA, but you just reply for specific questions. For example, are there certain mutations to breast cancer patients that are from age 20, let's say age 20, and they have a specific outcome, and you can say yes or not, and this is the time. But AI will change completely the picture, and I think we can definitely talk about AI on that. I think if you look at, disclaimer, I'm a fan of Google. I like Google very much. I really hope for Google to wake up and react to all these changes in AI. But right now, if you look at the results page of Google, right, compared to ChatGPT, it almost describes exactly the old world of information. It's based on separate silos of data, websites, versus the new world of information that looks like everything seems to be not only shared but deeply integrated, normalized, and unified, and that's ChatGPT. So at least on the individual company level, integration and complete data connectivity now is key to enable AI processing and of the existing data that they have and produce new insights. So that's for sure. The question is, how do we interconnect between different AI islands of scientific knowledge? How do you do that? And maybe that's a question that
Exactly.
would like to ask companies like Hammerspace.
It is interesting, and I think that the projects and where AI will be applied is going to be very industry specific in some ways, but in other ways it may not be. I was at the making an appointment with my healthcare provider the other day, and I actually had the option on Ask a Nurse. Do I want to talk to the AI Ask a Nurse or to a human? And then they're kind of trialing it to see what kind of results you get. And the AI gave fantastic ideas about, is this allergies or is it actually a cold that I have? And of course there's backstops by humans that you still want to check in, but that makes a lot of sense. And on the Hammerspace side, we are actually deeply entrenched with some of the largest hyperscale level AI projects for exactly what you're talking about, that connecting the data to the AI engines that may be scattered in many places is really what Hammerspace is built to do. But you also have to have the AI engines looking at the data and integrated with the applications that are using it. So, in the life sciences space, we could provide the data. I think Google or other companies can provide the AI engines, But if it's not tied to the industry applications and what researchers are used to using in their space, I still think it's difficult. Do you force the researchers to an entire new workflow? Or do you try to provide those results into the tools that they're used to looking at, the analytical tools? And I don't know where that's going to land. But I think it's a challenge back to the industry that the technology exists. We have the data sharing platforms. We have the AI technologies. And when we were prepping for this podcast, you said there's kind of no excuse not to solve it now. It's just who should drive the charge. And, is there companies like Illumina or someone else that is the final leg to this that has a lot of influence in industry that needs to really lean in to help bring it all together?
Yes, I suspect that the medical world, the clinical and medical world, they have the biggest weight on that. They and it's medical world and also pharma. The pharma and medical industry needs to democratize data, needs to conceive a new way of monetizing their data, because I understand if Kaiser Permanente doesn't want to give their data for free, for sure they shouldn't. But right now, I want to emphasize something. I mean, the fact that when a cancer patient provides a biopsy, for example, and genetic data, so these data are stored in Kaiser Permanente or in Foundation Medicine or whatever, Caris or any other company. But it's actually the patient's best interest for that data to be completely shared as widely as possible. Because by making this data available to doctors and scientists all over the world, we actually increase the chances of finding a cure for these patients or a treatment and understanding what it is. And every day that the mutations that were taken from his cancer, his or her cancer, are stored and not shared and are basically financial assets, he or she suffers, and that's not good, not for health and not for science.
One other topic I'd like to talk about for a moment, Rami, is this idea of multiomics. And I think it's new to a lot of folks that some of the terms we've been talking about in computational biology and genetics are fairly well known. Would you mind talking a little bit about what that is and maybe how data sharing comes into play when you're talking about multiomics?
Right. So multiomics is, first of all, what's omics? Omics is basically a short for any of these big data type of fields in biology and bioinformatics that spans across the entire either genome or proteome. And new technologies in the last 10, 15, 20 years basically allowed a breakthrough in generating these data. So instead of researching one or two genes, suddenly, let's say from 2008, advancement in technology allowed you to sequence the entire genome of a cell or a group of cells. So this is genome. So not only that, we also can sequence the level of RNA, the expressions of the genes, and we can do it across the entire genomics or transcriptomics, if we talk about RNA. So as biology starts to look at these vast amount of data across the whole cell, and it starts to add layers of types of data, that's when we call it multiomics. So if I sequence the entire genome, but I also sequence at the same time in that experiments also which genes are expressed and how, and maybe I also do an analysis of all the epigenomics of the cells, meaning how the DNA is, let's call it charged, its charging status. Then if you accumulate everything together, it's not easy, but you can you're supposed to do better science. And this is, it's new. I think it's very, I think that the technology itself, the biotechnology itself is much more, gives much more than what science, biology can actually ingest right now. It's going to take more and more years until we're able to make good science, and every few years there's a new technology. So this is the multiomics, and advancements in algorithms are it's very necessary. At the academy, it's still what number one producers of new algorithms for that. But AI also has something to do with that. These are the tools that can start carving out understanding or this knowledge from these multi-layers of big data in biological experiments. This is the multiomics.
Innovation in this space never slows down, that's for sure. There's always something new, it seems. And it's amazing. It's helping quality of life and longevity and all kinds of wonderful things. As we wrap up, what do you see as the next steps at Applied Genomics? Where are you guys taking your company in the next few years? And maybe where can we point our show listeners to learn a little bit more about you?
Sure. So we, Applied Genomics, would like to advance on three pathways. First of all, the pathway of services. We truly believe that having a good partner for collaboration and outsourcing of bioinformatics is today could be a very good solution for even big companies that would like to take a segment of their projects or even entire projects and let outsourced expert do it for them, and we saw the success for that. So we want to develop it even more. We want to have more solutions of collaborative outsourced bioinformatics. That's one part. The second one is product development. We are currently looking at the possibilities of expanding the genomics test in Israel. Technology. Israel doesn't do genomic testing for everyone, obviously, not only Israel. I think most of the countries still are not doing it. Maybe America, maybe the States and England started doing big projects, like England started doing the 100,000 genome project. So as we think that in the next years, more and more hospitals in Israel would like to think about what are the solutions for offering genome sequencing to anyone, maybe every newborn. That's not easy because it's still not cheap. There's a lot of technological advancement that needs to be done before it can be offered. So we definitely are looking at that space, and we have a lot of partners in Israel that we can work with. And the third one is research and development. We like to pay for access to very good data, very interesting silos of data, and that we data mine and analyze. And obviously now we will try maybe apply AI and ChatGPT on one of these big biological databases, multiomics and multiclinical metadata also. These are basically the activities that we'll try to, we are actually advancing.
Excellent. Well, Rami, thank you for joining the show. You have incredible experience, both on the technology as well as the science side. Guests like you are amazing to have on this show. We really appreciate your time and look forward to publishing this episode.
Thank you very much, Molly.
Thanks for listening to Data Unchained, powered by Hammerspace. To learn more, visit hammerspace.com. If you have a guest you would like to hear on the show, email me at molly@hammerspace.com.